Well, folks, we made it to season 7. Welcome to the Vulnerability Time podcast. I am your host, Josias Abriel, and published author. Speaking of published author, before the episode starts, make sure to go check out my books. They're available on Amazon, and the link is in the episode description below. Go ahead, get you some healing. One's a poetry book about overcoming pain and trauma and stuff like that, and then the other one's a self-awareness interactive journal notebook. So get you some healing. You're worth it. Another thing that you're worth all the love in the world. You're worth all the healing in the world. And I'm glad that you're here with us today to heal together. You are loved. You are valuable. This is your sign. Alrighty, enjoy the episode. Bye, folks. Alrighty, everyone. We love a pre-recorded intro. Okay, so, folks, today we'll be talking. Oh, I actually really do want to get into this topic. So today we'll be talking about trauma passed down through bodies, shame and sexual shame in trauma journey, and also managing depression and anxiety with, trying psychedelics. So we'll be getting into all of that. But first, before we get into that, welcome Leslie to the show. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yay. Okay, so Leslie, before we get into our topics, ooh, sorry, I burped. Before we get into our topics, tell us a little bit more about you. What do you do? Any credentials, the cool things that you do? Just
Yeah.
let us know, Leslie.
So thanks for asking. My name is Leslie Draffin. In a former life, I was a TV news anchor, and now I help women overcome the trauma stuck in their body through healing modalities like psychedelic mushrooms, like somatic practices, womb healing, menstrual cycle education, breathwork, meditation. And I really got here from my own journey, which I know we're going to dive into today, of being born in a deeply religious family, being adopted into that family after being put up for adoption as an
Mhm.
infant, and dealing with some sexual shame, dealing with anxiety, depression, burnout, perfectionism, all the yummy things.
Yes, yes. Okay, so for those of us who don't know, what is somatic? Because you mentioned
Mhm.
somatic. So what is that?
So, somatic, a good way to think of somatic work is mind body work. So, the focus on the connection back to the body. And somatic, comes from the Greek word that means whole self, whole organism. And so, it's just a holistic approach to um, therapy. It's a holistic approach to healing that really centers the body and understanding the body's sensations and languages versus staying in the mind.
Yes. Okay, gotcha, gotcha. Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you for breaking that down for
Mhm.
us. Um, okay. So I really want to hear about so let's start off with shame, sexual shame,
Mhm.
trauma. What is your journey behind that? Why those topics? You know,
Mhm.
what is your story? How did that show up in your world? What's your story
Yeah.
with that?
So, I was born into a preacher's family, adopted into a preacher's family,
Hmm.
and raised in the deep south of the United States
Oh,
where,
yeah.
yeah. Where are
The
you
Bible
from?
Belt. I'm from the South as well. Bible
Okay.
Belt. Yeah,
Okay.
Texas. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I live in Texas now. I was born and raised in South Carolina.
Okay.
So I had that upbringing where purity was the number one virtue, was really essential to protect yourself until marriage. And then when I got to college, 18 years old, I had sex for the first time.
Mhm.
And 4 weeks later, I was diagnosed with herpes. So,
Mhm.
all of the teachings of my childhood that said something bad will happen if you don't wait till marriage, well, that came true for me.
Yeah.
And at this point, I was already deeply suffering from eating disorders. I was very much in my perfectionist, good girl era. And
Mhm.
that diagnosis in January of my freshman year of college, while I was away from home, really just created this massive void, this massive disconnect between not only myself and my body, but myself and my family. Not from They didn't judge me. They weren't, really upset about it. They were disappointed, which is just like ugh, the worst. But because we didn't talk about it, and this was in 2009, we didn't talk, sorry, 2005, we didn't talk about it. We didn't address it. I certainly wasn't told to go to therapy for it. And so, because I felt so shameful and so dirty and so just disgusting and impure, I did what I knew how to do, which was starve myself and try to be the best person I possibly could be on the outside. So straight A's, joining all of the clubs, president of my dorm. And then that just transitioned into my 20s where I climbed the ladder of TV and silently was coping through alcohol abuse, Adderall
Mhm.
abuse, continued eating disorders,
Mhm.
and looking for love and just accepting like pennies, right?
Mhm.
Scraps from men who were just like POSs, right? So
Mhm.
that was really the story of how that deeply impacted my life. Um, and I didn't really understand what that was doing to me and how much that was a problem until I
Mhm.
had my spiritual awakening in my mid 30s and really started to see how this one thing.
Mid-30s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Leslie, I thought you were in your 20s.
Oh, no, I'm 39. So
Whoa, Leslie, no way. There's no way. No.
so I had this spiritual awakening and really just started to pick apart these things that were keeping me from being able to be open in my relationship. I was with a
Mhm.
wonderful man at this point, and I felt like I couldn't receive pleasure. I couldn't be vulnerable enough to ask for support
Mhm.
and ask for help. I had to be like the strong one. I had to be the independent one, and I wore that like a badge of honor, but really it was
Mhm.
an armor around my brokenness that I didn't know how to take off, undo.
Whoa. I loved how you verbalized that so much. Wore it like a badge of honor when really it was just a armor around the brokenness.
Mhm.
Wow, that is verbalized perfectly. I can totally relate to that
Mhm.
statement. And going back a little bit, what you said, like, yeah, like, as y'all know, I haven't talked about this in a minute, but I'm also was a preacher's kid as well. Um, and so, like Leslie said, sex was just, it wasn't talked about.
Mhm.
It was just said, save yourself for marriage and things like that, and that was just it. That was just
Mhm.
it. No talking. And so that automatically, unintentionally, inadvertently just can add shame.
Yeah.
We're not, at least for me, and let me know if you relate to this, Leslie, we weren't necessarily taught that it wasn't necessarily enforced that, sex is something that is just part of the human experience.
Mhm.
It was taught as this shameful thing if it's done before marriage, and even after marriage, like you're still going to try to navigate that, because it wasn't talked about to begin with. It was just something that just was not, talked about. It was
Mhm.
just kind of shamed
Yeah.
and something that was, avoided.
And I think what's interesting too is, and this is certainly what I felt about talking openly about herpes,
Hmm.
when you have something that is a shameful belief, a shameful story, and you hide that, and I have a closet over here I'm looking at. When you hide shame in a closet, you begin
Hmm.
to create a story around how much of a monster that thing about you is that creates the shame.
Hmm.
And when I finally just pulled the band-aid off and started to share openly that I had herpes, which is about 2-ish years ago on the internet,
Hmm.
I realized that that was like a mouse. It wasn't a monster
Hmm.
at all. It was this thing that I could completely love and accept about myself. And of course, I had a really strong support system to help me with. But that was one thing that I really understood and noticed about talking openly. When you shine a light on shame, shame loses all of its power. And
Yes.
yet, the same thing with sex, right? What I found so interesting about the upbringing around sex was it was very much taught to me that sex was going to be this beautiful, magical thing between your
Mhm.
husband and your wife.
Yeah.
And yet, when you got married, who was telling me how to be good at sex? Who was telling me
Right.
how to be okay with
Mhm.
him? looking at my body or him,
Mhm.
oral sex for me was an incredibly shameful situation. I was so
Right.
scared of that.
Mhm.
And for me, it was like, well, it doesn't quite add up because it's like I'm supposed to save myself and then just have good sex. But how am I going to have good sex if we never talked about it? And if
Right.
I've wrapped up all of these like thoughts and beliefs around my body being dirty and nasty, and
Right.
yet all of a sudden I'm going to let him worship this body, like, I don't get
Mhm.
that. It didn't compute. Things did not connect.
Right.
And so,
Right.
yeah, the lack of talking about something, the hiding away of it creates this shame monster that in reality might not be
Mhm.
shameful at all. It's just hidden.
Right. Exactly. Like something becomes not necessarily a fact, but it just becomes a story that, we can create, and like you said, like shame and secrecy, it can just do a lot of damage. And it's
Yeah.
actually really, and no shame on anyone who's struggling with shame. Like, we
Right.
get it. We get how difficult it is. We get it.
Mhm.
But I was doing some research on how shame actually affects the brain, and I was already on a journey of just uncovering shame when I first started.
Mhm.
But I would say, like, in the middle of my journey with, just, I called it throwing myself under a Hummer limousine. Instead of throwing myself under the bus, I was like, oh, I'll be a little bougie. Um, I call it, throwing myself under the Hummer limousine,
Okay.
And so in the middle of that journey of me doing that, I started doing research on how shame affects the brain, and that really encouraged me even more. That validated me to be like, okay, yeah, I'm really doing the right thing by
Mhm.
uncovering all the shame and the secrecy, because, like, there was a point where secrecy was survival, and then it's like
Yeah.
eventually it stopped serving me.
Yeah.
It's like it had a purpose, it had a point where it was serving me, but eventually it was no longer serving me anymore. I was in safer environments
Mhm.
where I could share, and shame. So the secrecy, at least for me, secrecy, after it no longer serves me, became shame.
Mm.
Yes, and so for me, secrecy in my life, folks, not saying y'all's, but in my life, secrecy, when survival is no longer needed, equaled shame.
Yeah.
And so once something used to serve me that no longer serves me, a coping mechanism that was unhealthy but served me no
Mhm.
longer serves me, like, it was time, to speak out about it. But it didn't happen in the snap of a finger. Like, it took it eating me alive. It took the
Mhm.
shame to eat me alive and do so much damage to me
Yeah.
mentally for me to speak out. Like, it took pressure to
Mhm.
push me to speak out. And now, like, I speak because I know how dark shame can get me. So
Yeah.
now I just speak. But at first, and in the middle of that journey, of that process, it was totally not like that. And so I love everything that you just said. Yeah, like sex is like I had to get comfortable just saying the word sex.
Right.
I just had to. I had to. And the way I did that was I just kept saying it. Like, I just kept throwing that out. Like, I just kept saying it,
Mhm.
because I realized it was like, and I said this the other day on an episode. And so I just think that's like the universe confirming it, of something that you said, for like the longest, and then I'm gonna shut up after this, but like for like the longest, I would pride myself of, yeah, no, I'm just gonna save myself for marriage. But at that point, when I was saying those things, I already had felt like no man can ever love me, and I'll never get married, so it all works out. But I'll just keep saying that. I'll keep telling myself what I wish to believe,
Mhm.
you know even though I wasn't believing it. I'm just like, well, the best I can do is at least lie.
Mhm.
And so I was wearing that, like you said, and you said it so perfectly, as a badge of honor, but really it was an armor around my brokenness. It was an excuse for me
Mhm.
to not face that.
Mhm.
Because for me, like, not only was sex taught shamefully, like, I was also sexually abused.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, so it was just shame on shame, you
Mhm.
know? And so, and fun fact, not a fun fact, oh, that's horrible. So, yes, my father was a pastor, but he sexually abused many children. And of
Oh,
course he got away with it. Of course he did. Of course he did. Yeah. So if I see a pastor, I always I just till this day, like I'm just like I don't trust any of them. You know, I'm just like, oh, I don't trust because you think on the outside, oh, it's great,
yeah.
but then they're doing stuff in secrecy and then judging people while they're speaking on the mics, you know, and I'm just like, I've seen that too many times. So I'm just
Mhm.
like, not saying all pastors are the same, but I'm just saying like I don't trust a lot of them,
Yeah.
all of them, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, so but the reason why I mention all of that is to say that, you know, uh, keeping that in past its point of survival
Mhm.
turned it fueled shame. It didn't
Right.
fuel survival. I was no longer needing to survive. I was now in a safe space where I had safe people around me, people that have
Mhm.
proved to me over and over and over again that they love me regardless. And
Right.
so shame, when when it was time to speak, you know, shame was just drilling me. And so yes, but it's because of all those things, you know, that also just increased shame, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Well, I think it's really important exactly what you said, right? That sometimes secrecy is survival.
Mhm.
And I want to just honor you for sharing that part about your story as well. But I think what's interesting, and I think you noted this as well, so many
Mhm.
times when we have to hide things because we're in an unsafe situation, one of the first things that starts to peak up, and that was certainly my story, was these
Mhm.
coping mechanisms that were doing just as much damage, if not more. And I was starving myself. I was throwing up what little I did eat. I was drinking every single day. And
Mhm.
then some doctor handed me an Adderall prescription because I do have ADHD, but all that did was like let me lose more weight quicker from a doctor
Yeah, it
prescribed
takes away your
medication.
appetite.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what's interesting is, even when we get to this place of safety and when we have these people around us, so even when I'm, 30 something years old, finally like, you know what? I'm going to tell everybody on the internet that I got herpes. The safety was present for me and the support system was present for me, but yet my body still did not understand. It wasn't like
Mhm.
fully on board. And so I had a
Right.
massive nervous system activation after like letting that out of the closet,
Mhm.
terrified
Yeah.
that somebody was going to get me. And
Mhm.
I remember sitting here thinking, my husband's going to love me and does love me regardless. He knows I've got herpes. He's known since the beginning. And he's not going to think any less of me. My parents can think whatever the hell they want. It's
Mhm.
whatever. And, anyone else can just, if they're for me, they can be here and be cool with it. And if not, like, see you later. But still, it's the body. If the body's not on board, no matter how much your mind will tell you that you are safe, it's not gonna track.
Right. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I completely agree. You know, I say because the nervous system is
yeah,
like our second brain. It keeps score,
yeah,
and you know, we talk about regulating the mental health. We also talk about regulating the nervous system because it's
yeah.
just like you said, those two things really they got to be on board. I mean,
Mhm.
sure, there is progress still and props, but it's just it really it's more beneficial if they're both on board because
Right,
you could be like in a safe environment, but your nervous system could still release those sensations of unsafety.
right.
And it's just like you can kind of um be blinded by or reject the safety because
Mhm.
your nervous system is just like, are you sure we're safe? How do
Right.
we know we're safe? Like, we're intellectually we're seeing these things, but
Mhm.
we've kept score of so many unsafe moments.
Right.
By we, I'm talking about the nervous system has kept score of so many unsafe moments that it's just like sometimes, at least for me, I know, like, um not all the time, but sometimes it definitely, won the battle between what I was seeing and what the nervous system was feeling.
Yes.
And so it's like it didn't even matter at one point the safety that was around me, because the nervous system was just like, we're going to overtake this and we're going to keep you trapped because
Mhm.
we're not fully healed yet. We're not healing yet. We're not recognizing that the nervous system also needs to, receive that healing, not just the mental health. And I say it now, I say it like I would say, like I said the other day, I'm just like, intellectually I can see something,
Mhm.
like my mind can see something, but my emotions, my heart, my nervous system are on a different page. It's taking them some time to catch up. So it's just like I can see, for example, like I can see that a guy is healthy for me,
Mhm.
but my nervous system, though it's been healing and I'm so proud of it, but there's a small part that sees that a guy is toxic but is attracted.
Mm. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I've had to put my nervous system, I didn't want to say put it in the back seat, because like I recognize that I've been working on it and been healing it. But
Mhm.
like intellectually, I would stay or continue or choose, this healthy guy, you know, but I noticed that like the emotions that I had towards him at first, it would start to leave because he was healthy.
Mm.
But I intellectually in my
Mm.
mind, I could see he's healthy. So I stayed with him because I was just like,
Uh-huh.
intellectually, I'm going to stay with him because eventually my nervous system will catch up. And I just know that this is right for me. But
Mhm.
emotionally,
Yeah.
it's gone. But if this was a toxic guy,
Mm.
intellectually, I'd be like, he's a no. But the emotions, the nervous system says he's comfortable, he's familiar.
There you go. Right
Yeah.
there. So I just want to share a couple of things that are so interesting about what you shared. So he's comfortable, he's familiar because he's toxic.
Hmm.
So you can gaslight your brain. Your brain will be gaslit and it can fall for things.
Yeah.
And there's multiple parts of the brain, right? And so what I would recommend, and for those listening, your nervous system is actually incredibly smart. I really see the nervous system as, the first line of what I deal with,
Mhm.
because in truth, your nervous system is always tracking, even for the
Yes.
minute details of unsafety. And so if you've lived in a state of unsafety, it might be looking for those things everywhere. However, if you are in a pattern of being with toxic guys, being in situations where you're not valued, in chronic stress, if you're at a work environment that they just like always pile on, that is what is known. And so your nervous system wants the thing that it knows,
Yeah.
not necessarily judging if that's good for you or not.
Right.
And so what I say is you can gaslight your brain into thinking that this is okay or this is not okay, but if you really can start to understand how the nervous system and the body works,
Mm.
you'll understand that some of the things you think you're thinking are
Mhm.
actually sensations first. So when
Yeah.
we look at how the body works, 80% of sensation or 80% of the things that come up in your brain started as sensation. And so we're just verbal beings, we're intellectual beings. We have evolved into that ability to process things verbally.
Mm.
And that's why we think, oh, all the thoughts are first, but actually it starts with sensation in the body. And so that's a key part of somatic practice. It's instead of letting your mind do the wandering and your mouth do the talking, you have to start understanding what teeny tiny subtle little shifts in the body are happening to say this person's safe, this person's not safe. And what you just said about a pattern of unsafe people, my 20s, a
Mhm.
pattern of unsafe narcissistic dudes. That was what I knew. And so I was gaslit into thinking that that was what was safe and good
Mhm.
for me. But in reality, it was a subconscious and an unconscious pattern that when I followed it down the rabbit hole, really started to show me, okay, this is maybe an internal belief about what I feel like I deserve. thanks,
Yeah.
herpes. This is an internal belief or a story based on what I've been told in the church or what I've been told in society. And so, yeah, it
Mhm.
makes a ton of sense that there's a disconnect between what the body and the nervous system say and what the brain is saying, no matter which way you're leaning. And so
Yeah.
that's a key part to start um, really starting to look at
Yeah.
and just noticing. I really just the main thing I do with people is help them notice what's this, what's that
Mhm.
thing, and then kind of piece together. And that's also where psychedelics come in so handy.
Yes. Awareness is power.
Mhm.
Yes. So speaking of the body, I'm really interested and curious in knowing, so on our pre-meeting, you mentioned a statement around like trauma from the mother's body.
Yes.
Since we're talking about body, I want to hear more about that. Like,
Yep.
what's your story with that? What does that mean? Like, anything
Mhm.
you want to share about that?
Yeah, great question.
The floor is
So,
yours.
when I started to do the work with mushrooms and to do the work
Hmm.
with somatic healing and really starting to connect with my womb and my menstrual cycle, which all happened for me in my
Hmm.
mid to early 30s. Um, what I started to uncover were these stories, these thoughts, these beliefs that really signaled to me that I felt very much scarcity, very much
Hmm.
unsafety. And what it reminded me when I was doing this work was how, as a child, I used to have this incredible fear that like the bottom was going to fall out. And I used
Mm.
to have this whole catastrophized, like, nighttime rundown of, okay, well, if my dad dies, we're going to lose our house because we lived in the manse, the parsonage, the church's house.
Mhm.
And if dad dies, we lose the house. My mom doesn't work. We're going to be destitute. We're going to be homeless. And for me, that meant I was probably going to die. And
Mhm.
that was like a thing I ruminated on as a kid.
Yeah.
Well, consciously, we didn't have a lot of money, but consciously, I'm looking around and it's like, well, there's nothing that's really proving to me that this is going to be what happens. So, as I am doing the work in my 30s, right, what I notice is this may not be from me.
Mm.
Okay. So, I have that awareness.
Mhm.
Then I meet my birth mother for the first time.
Mhm.
And what I discovered from her story was that when she was 6 months pregnant with me, that's when she discovered she was pregnant. She had
Yeah.
had PCOS prior, and she was 12. So she hadn't had regular menstrual cycles to begin with. And so, of course, when she was missing a period for 6 months, she was a heavier set girl too. She didn't know she was pregnant. When
Mhm.
she finally found out she was pregnant, she got kicked out of her house by her narcissistic mother,
Mhm.
whose boyfriend ends up being my father. So
Mm.
she gets kicked out of the house. Yeah, she gets kicked out of the house, and she goes and lives with a host family through Bethany Christian Services, which is the adoption agency that I was adopted through. At 6 months in utero, I'm swimming around in a cortisol-fueled pond
Yeah.
of hormone activation that
Mm.
imprints on me. And so when I am born through C-section, which is also very traumatic, for both mother and baby, and it doesn't give you the same feel. Like when you look at trauma, C-section babies, they've actually studied this. Like they have
Mhm.
a higher rate of nervous system dysregulation because they don't have the full completion, right? They're not in the canal, they're not getting the squeeze. It's like a different entryway into life. It's very jarring to just get ripped out of a belly. So C-section baby, and then I go into foster care. And so, from the earliest conscious, and of course, I don't remember these things, but from the earliest conscious and even the unconscious, swimming in the void of the womb before this, I was being wired subconsciously and unconsciously for scarcity, for abandonment, for fear of bad things happening, and for isolation and loneliness and a lack of
Mhm.
connection. And when I heard her story and then ate mushrooms and was doing all these things like at the same time, it dawned on me that this is why I am the way I am. So you asked about the mother's line. So what's also fascinating, I had this incredible fear, and I should say, I didn't find out how young my birth mother was until I was in my 20s. My parents knew, but they didn't tell me. Thank goodness they didn't tell me because I already had a complex around being terrified of getting accidentally pregnant. So when I really started to look back at this, I'm like, where did that fear come from of this, of pregnancy, of sex in general? And to
Yeah.
me, it's probably because when she was getting molested and raped from the time she was 5 to 12,
Mhm.
I was there. I was an egg in her ovary
Yeah.
waiting to be born.
Yeah.
And when we look at epigenetics, which can be traced back to potentially 7 generations back, that's like 220, 250 years. What's in your matrilineal line that far back? Really messed up shit,
Mhm.
right? At the best case scenario, the women in your line that long ago were married to someone who loved them, but they were pretty much property, couldn't vote, didn't
Yeah.
have rights. As a person of color, your ancestors were most likely enslaved. And
Mhm.
so it's just like all of that is passed down
Mhm.
epigenetically, which has been studied and proven
Yeah.
through the different ways our nervous system responds, through
Yeah.
trauma, and so, knowing all of that and then witnessing it in my own interactions, my own hesitancy to be open and vulnerable, my own inability to really feel safe,
Mhm.
confirmed for me that all the things I was learning tracked for my body as well.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Um, because what we call that, folks, y'all know I'm getting my PhD in sociology. So what we call that in sociology is intergenerational trauma. Um, and so basically trauma that's passed on, so thank you for sharing that, because I mostly, focus on um childhood trauma.
Mhm.
So I love to hear. I don't know much about intergenerational trauma. I know that it's a thing, but you helped to enlighten me. I learned a lot just by listening to you. So thank you for sharing that, to see more about it, because I mostly focus on, adverse childhood experiences,
Yeah.
and that's and the C-section thing. I knew that was traumatic for the mother. I didn't think about it being traumatic from the baby.
Yeah.
And I also, when I speak about childhood trauma, there's many people that go through adverse childhood experiences. Folks, don't get me started on my soapbox about that. Um, However, they could already just be born with so much
Yes.
trauma
Mhm.
as well. And then you have this childhood stuff added onto it, and we don't think about that. We
Right.
don't think about that, you know? So yeah, like, because usually what I think about when I think of intergenerational trauma is parents repeating the same actions once the
Sure.
child is born.
Mhm.
However, there's also that it's just that ingrainment,
Mhm.
in the baby. Like the parents can do the best they could and be great parents and not repeat the actions, but it could still be in the child. And that child grows up and, we're not wondering why this is that, why this is that. And that made me think about it. I don't know if it was you or was it just higher self in the universe, but something made me think about my eating disorder. And I was just like, did that come from my parents? Where
Mm.
did that come from? Because, you know, ever since I was a kid, I just never really I never really liked food.
Mhm.
Just and that could be because it's intergenerational. It could be because I was experiencing all this trauma anyways.
Yeah.
It could be both. Um, but I remember that I didn't start noticing traumatic like symptoms of trauma until I was around what, 8th grade.
Mhm.
Um so how old was I? Maybe 10 or 11, I don't know. But
8th grade,
until
yeah, probably 12, 13,
okay,
maybe
12,
a little older.
13. Yeah, yeah. So but that doesn't mean it wasn't in my body. I noticed
Mhm.
that a lot of times with like trauma from childhood that it may seem fine. Everything may seem fine at first, but it's just like, oh, at a certain age, it's gonna manifest,
Mhm.
and it's gonna it's gonna be subconscious, conscious. It's gonna manifest in ways that we wouldn't even think that. Oh, addiction is correlated. to this that had nothing to
Mhm.
do with each other. What? Why am I so easily addicted to things? It
Yeah.
could be a multitude of things. And so yeah, I don't know if it was either you or it was either the universe, but it made me think like, um because it was during our pre-meeting. So it
Yeah.
was either you or the universe that made me think about like, did my eating disorder start somewhere
Mm.
other than my childhood trauma? So that's what I was.
Well, I think it's fascinating. I think that's definitely something to continue to be aware of. What I will
Mhm.
also say about my story,
Yeah.
I remember growing up and I was in a closed adoption in South Carolina, and there was so much chatter around nature versus nurture, right?
Mm,
Like that was like such a thing. That was such actually like an adoption is kind of don't get me started about adoption. But anyway, there's trauma in adoption for sure.
mhm,
And
mhm,
what I noticed is so much of that rhetoric was like, oh, you can nurture them out of anything that was their nature.
mm.
Okay. So, what I noticed now doing all of this and being like, I swear, eating mushrooms makes you feel like a game maker in Hunger Games where you just like sit above
Yes.
yourself and you're like, ha ha
Yes.
ha, I know where all the things are. I know where everything
Yeah.
is hidden.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, after the cortisol flush of my birth mother getting kicked out of her home and being in complete stress and survival modes, fight, flight, freeze, all the things,
Yeah.
and then the C-section, and then going straight into foster care, and for a month having the people who were around me be fighting about, am I going to get adopted, or are they going to keep me, or whatever. And then I go into this family where, and I love my parents, and everyone is a human doing life for the first time, right? But what I notice now looking back is there were attachment issues and things I was seeing my mother display to me where I couldn't feel fully open to be myself at all.
Mhm. Mhm.
And she didn't display her emotions very well. She was very much someone who would like hide in her room and cry. She wasn't like a
Mhm.
fully expressed person. So I didn't
Right.
feel that it was okay to
Yeah.
cry. Like I rarely would cry in front of people that I was dating, my
Yeah.
husband included. Hurt my ankle
Mhm.
last weekend, cried in front of him. He's like, God, I never see you cry. Yeah, it's because I'm hiding in my room. So
Yeah.
it's still a thing that is implanted into me. So I had that abandonment from
Yeah.
first mother. I had the complete chaos of the first month of life being like in a state of flux. And
Mhm.
then when I was adopted into a family who very much had that idea. Let me know if this was you too. We live in a fishbowl.
Mhm.
Everybody's watching us.
Oh, yeah.
Everything has to look perfect. And we need to make sure we always look perfect and we're not going to
Perfect.
freak out and have our emotions.
Mhm.
And so it was just continued detachment and detachment. And I had deep mother wounding that I have had to work through thanks to mushrooms. And
Mhm.
I think that that's just a fascinating part of my story, but also kind of what we've been talking about is the intergenerational trauma
Yeah.
that can be even passed down by folks who raised you but aren't necessarily biologically connected to you.
Right. Mm. First off, yes, I relate to that fishbowl. I love what you verbalized about the detachment because I was like, yeah, having to be perfect is also practicing forms of detachment.
Mhm.
So it's a consistent practice of detachment. So we're teaching ourselves, we're conditioning ourselves, we're being conditioned and programmed, detachment. And then before you know it, we're an adult and we're struggling with certain things
Mhm.
because that's just all we knew was forms of detachment. So now it's just what do you call it, second nature or whatever they
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love the way you verbalized that detachment, and it made me think about like, yeah, like that is so true. I didn't even see it like that. Like that, having grown up in that fishbowl, preacher's kids, the
Mhm.
eyes were on the family,
Yeah.
perfect, had to be perfect. Yeah, like that's also like, you know, practicing detachment,
I
you
think it's
know. So,
also, let me know if this tracks,
yeah.
practicing self-abandonment.
Oh yes, 1000%. Practicing many things.
Yes, but
Many
as
things.
as you self-abandon, I think this is
Yeah.
fascinating. We're about to dive hard into religion.
Yep.
As you practice self-abandonment, whether you're a preacher's kid or not,
Hmm.
what does that set you up for? no boundaries,
Right.
becoming a victim.
Mhm.
That's like part of the whole indoctrination of
Yes, on
I am not
purpose.
divine myself. Because I very much see myself as part of God. I am part God, a
Exactly.
goddess, right? The divine is me, and I am her. And that's what
Period.
they don't teach you in the Bible, but it was in scripture. They just didn't
It
want to
was in
canonize
script
it.
exactly. It
So
was.
it
It
was.
is.
It
Mhm.
is. Yes, it's
Yeah,
in the books that they felt were too radical to actually put in your canonized work. Okay.
exactly. Oh, don't get me
And
started.
so, yeah, it's like the self-abandonment aspect is ingrained in
Mhm.
children raised in religion. And for me, that is set up one, protection of pastors. We've
Yes.
had it in my denomination too. We had that go down last year.
Mhm.
And the Southern Baptists, we've seen those guys. We see the Catholic Church get the most flack for it, but it's happening everywhere.
Everywhere.
And it's just so fascinating because the self betrayal, the self abandonment, and the detachment from who you truly are keeps you from being able to verbalize boundaries, verbalize your authentic self
Mhm.
for fear of judgment, for fear of hell, for fear of
Yes.
questioning authority. And it sets so many people up to be traumatized by
Yes.
religion.
Yes. Listen, yes. Oh my, you know what? This could be I want to have a whole separate episode just about this because yes, yes. Okay. Wow. Yes, it strips away your wholeness.
Yes, yes, yes.
It strips away your wholeness. It leaves you more susceptible to, in my opinion, a the true religion has maybe different denominations, but the true religion is control. And I
Yes.
just, knowing what I know about the history of the Bible,
Hmm.
I'm just like, oh, these things were changed. These things were taken out. How come they didn't add this book? Oh, why
Hmm.
did they take out this book? Oh, gotcha.
Yep.
So, yes, control, it strips away, it leaves you more susceptible to manipulation,
Yep.
and fear is a great control mechanism. And like you said,
Yeah.
it protects pastors. It exacerbates patriarchy.
Yeah.
It validates and justifies injustices,
Yes.
and so like the church, in my experience, the church doesn't, like from what I experienced, the my experiences, folks, is the church doesn't want to talk about sexual abuse.
Mm-mm.
What do they say? Oh, just forgive, have grace. You need to get over it. You got to
Yeah.
pray about it. All these statements, these pretty statements, are just another way to shut the victim up or to
Mhm.
just shut someone up, keep them controlled, keep them in their place, because speaking about such things is out, quote unquote, out of control.
Right.
But they want to keep people controlled because
Mhm.
why? Because one, you're taking away someone's power.
Yep.
You set them up, and now they're going through life not knowing that they have power and that they are
Mhm.
powerful and that God is within them, not outside them. God is everywhere, including within them.
Yeah.
That, like when the scripture, I think it's still in current scripture. I don't think they took this out, but I think they manipulated it. When it says, we are God, and it mean
Mhm.
it not as verb, but as noun, saying like
Mm.
God is within us.
Mhm.
We have the divine within us. We are that,
Yep.
not saying verb, but as a noun, we are
Mhm.
that. We are God, goddesses. We are.
Yep.
We are. But telling someone that gives them power that is
Yep.
already theirs, but power is a threat to other powers.
Mhm.
And the other powers don't want the collective knowing their power because why? They lose control when
Mhm.
people start getting knowledge and knowing their power. So it's a great business move to keep people powerless,
Yeah.
separated, um, gaslit,
Yep.
silenced. It's a great power move, and it's a great money maker. I mean, I
Mhm.
can't tell you how many times I've been to churches or heard about churches. My father was one of them where fear was used to gain so much money.
Yeah.
And this person needs that extra bit of money to pay their bill, pay their rent. but they give it to the church because of fear. And the pastor saying, well, if you don't give, you're going to hell. Or if you give,
Mhm.
God will bless you, and things like that, as if you have
Right.
to pay for your relationship with God, as if you have
Right.
to pay for blessings and things like that. Like, no, you are worthy of all of that without payment.
Mhm.
Payment is such a man-made construct, and how we twist things. It's very, very man-made
Yeah.
construct. You know how things are just have to be paid for and not freely given. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
that's ridiculous. That you have to pay to be on Earth, and that blows my mind. Don't get me started on that. So I have two questions.
Yes.
One, okay, so first off, I have a question. How did you overcome your sexual shame? Or is that something that's still a journey for you? But
Mm,
if it hasn't been overcome, what is this progress looked like for you? For
yeah.
anyone out there who's, suffering.
So I went to therapy. I went to sex therapy. And what I still
Yes.
felt was
Yes.
very much in the head, not in the body. And what I
Mm,
could sit there and my therapist would be like, "Oh my gosh, it's like talking to a peer." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm literally a perfectionist elder daughter. Of course I'm going to
mm,
ace therapy." That
mm.
doesn't mean I feel better afterwards. But so what finally helped was eating mushrooms, was
Yes.
microdosing, which is when you microdosing psychedelics, and that basically means you're eating a teeny amount, you're not high or hallucinating,
Mhm.
but you're still able to reap the benefits of psilocybin, which is the psychoactive ingredient. What that's doing in the brain is it's quieting the part of your brain called the default mode, where your ingrained beliefs live, where your habits live, where
Mm,
your high processing judgment center is living. And for me, my default mode was anxiety, shame, depression. And so, as I ate these tiny amounts of mushrooms a few times a week for several weeks at a time, I was able to quiet down the default mode and start to um, connect new parts of the brain. That's called neuroplasticity. Connecting new parts of the brain through rituals like self pleasure, through rituals like massage, through
mm,
rituals like partnered play with my husband, where it wasn't like we were doing penetrative sexual activities, but
mm,
we would do something like a five senses practice where we would bring
mhm.
something soft, something tickly, something spiky, and we would do these partnered
Yes.
situations where my brain was able to see and my body was able to feel this is safe, this is okay. And little by little, by picking apart all of the places where the shame was living
Yeah.
and talking openly about herpes was a hugely healing part for me.
Yes.
I was able to really move through it. Now, there are still times that I notice contraction, right? So,
Right.
I mean, how much? I mean, it's not that TMI. I talk about it on podcasts all the time. So here you go. um,
Possibility time.
after I'd been doing this work for probably 2 years. Yep, 2 years. I embarked on a December self challenge where I was like, okay, I'm going to experience pleasure every single day this month. Doesn't mean I'm
Mhm.
going to try to have an orgasm every day this month, but I want to do something that makes me feel pleasure.
Right. Right.
And about the middle of the month, I, wanted to play with some sensation play with my husband. So I
Yeah.
was like, I had bought this like spanky thing, like a flogger. I don't remember exactly what it's called, a paddle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I want you to spank me with this.
Mhm.
Consensual
Right.
partnered relationship. I've been with this man for almost 10 years at this point.
Yes. Yes.
He's into it. I'm into it. And then at some point, he pauses, just an infinitesimal pause.
Yeah.
And immediately shame floods my body. Oh my God, he's judging me. He doesn't want to
Mhm.
do this. I'm dirty. I'm bad. And I like have to stop. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to stop. So it came flooding back in. And that was really interesting and an insightful thing for me to have happen because it's like, okay, that was a contraction in that body that was based on this outside thought that he's judging.
Right.
Now,
Mhm.
another thing for me is that because I actually contracted herpes through oral sex,
Mhm.
which is a way you can get it, but people don't tell you that.
Mm.
I felt so uncomfortable allowing my husband to go down on me.
Right.
And
Right.
I would have this like almost like I could had to like keep the legs closed. Like I had to be very and if folks can't
Right.
see me, but I'm
Right.
curling into a ball. Like I felt like very,
Mhm.
oh, right. So I have to like be closed off. And
Yeah.
so those are still things that I'm working on and still things that, the body is showing me that shame is still living in those certain places.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
overall, I would say shame does not rule my life anymore. I'm sober. I'm not partaking in a bunch of these coping mechanisms that I previously had relied on in my 20s.
Right.
And for me, that's sort of the progress. But I'm telling you, eating little tiny doses of psychedelic mushrooms was
Yes.
kind of the turning point for the cataclysmic like rocket into okay, we're identifying it, we're aware of it, we've noticed it. What do we need now, and how do we move through
Yes. I Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's vulnerability time. We say it all. So,
it?
okay. So, a little side note. So, with my friends, I call it girl time, and so we just talk about everything. We talk about everything. So, um, okay, so like I don't know, like, but with like my male friends, they're like more like I don't know, like I just don't talk about it like that. But like my girls, it's like it's girl time. We talk about everything. We go from talking about this to talking childhood trauma to talking about let me tell you about these men. They are so hot, but why are they like this? You know, things like that. Like we not saying every girl does that, but I'm just saying like that's what happens during girl time, and we talk about like, okay, so how's your sex life, you know, like we'll talk like that. So this is vulnerability time, so it's extra welcome here. But just
Perfect.
want you to know like I'm used to this, so
Good.
you're good here. Okay, so I love that you mentioned that. So are you okay to because I think we're gonna go over an hour. That's
Mhm.
fine with me. Is that okay with you?
Yes, it's
Okay,
good.
good, because I want to give you space and time. I don't want you to feel rushed.
Mhm.
Because I want to, you know, get to hearing about your you know, the mental health and the psychedelic experiences. I
Yes.
want okay, so um but before we get to that, and take your time, you have plenty of time. You mentioned earlier about spiritual awakening.
Mhm.
What? Before I get into that, sorry, folks listening. So something really cool. So, I learned that recently, shrooms and weed, all these natural things were legal and normal throughout majority of human history. It is only a modern thing that they
Mhm.
are quote unquote illegal. Why? Because these certain natural things give people power.
Mhm.
It shows them their power, it awakens them. And folks, back when, you know, Bible was being written, they used these things.
Mhm.
So they used these things. A lot of their quote unquote dreams came
Yes.
from these things, these natural, normal things, but it's now programmed and conditioned that, oh, these things are shameful, these things are bad, these things are that's of the devil. No, that is just our modern society telling us that, and we're letting it, you know, we're letting scripture be manipulated any kind of way, and
Mhm.
just like, oh, they just had these dreams while they were asleep. No, this was normal to, you know, do mushrooms, you know, smoke weed. Like these were normal things. So,
Right.
folks, I want you to just know that like um I just want y'all to know because if you were like me when I first would hear about like someone doing drugs, like I feel like I was always a fan of legalizing drugs, or legalizing like weed and mushrooms, you know, all these natural things. And this is a long time ago, but like I kind of like held some like judgment towards people that did it,
Mhm.
and it was because of religion. So it was weird because it's just
Mm.
like here's what I think, and then here's what my religion is telling me. And at that
Oof.
time I was just really gaslit, and so I, you know, once again self-abandoned myself of what I truly just think, um and I let religion tell me, no, that they're bad. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
if they knew Jesus, they wouldn't need that stuff. And now I did research on things and why things all of a sudden became illegal and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I'm just like, wow, I was lied to the whole time. And then I
Yeah.
also did research on the history of the Bible. Fun fact, y'all, the Old Testament was not even supposed to be in the Bible. It was not even the Bible, but that's a different story. But um Yeah, so it's just saying, folks, that a lot of our programming and conditioning,
Mhm.
question. It's okay to question. It's okay to
Yeah.
question, and I mean, question it. You know,
Yep.
questioning it set me so free, and I learned the truth about so many things, and I'm
Mhm.
just like, okay, like, wow. Um, I and if it's so right, then how come I can't question it? If it's right, then I'll
Right.
just question it. But yeah, so
I think that is I'm so happy that you brought this up. Um, I think that my purpose here on this planet, in addition to many other things, but one is to question everything. My mom tells me this story that I was speaking in full sentences, asking questions by age 1. All
oh,
right. So, like, your girl was meant to ask all the questions. I went
mm,
into a job where I literally got paid to ask questions as a journalist. I just wasn't asking the right questions.
mm,
And so, when I started to work with psychedelics in my 30s, I had never experimented before my 30s. I had very much like what you're saying, a lot of judgment, a lot of shame, a lot of fear because I was a
mhm,
dare girl. I won a contest to decorate a sweatshirt in 3rd grade. Dare. That's how
yeah,
dare I was. Okay.
yeah,
And so, exactly what you're saying. The reason why these things are illegal is not because you have a loving government worried that you're going to get high and fall off of a 5-story building. They're worried you're going to be uncontrollable.
right.
And so when you look at when these laws became in action, it was during Vietnam.
Mhm,
It was during this war on drugs, which was absolutely based in racism.
yeah,
And so, yes, those questions, when I started to ask those questions, I was like,
mhm,
oh my gosh, okay, even though where I am, it is still not legal, I'm going to go somewhere where I can do this and be able to feel safe doing it. And so, for me, that was a huge hurdle I had to overcome first is
yeah,
just because and this was also after COVID, I was like, just because over here in this state, it's okay. And in my state, it's not. What makes me different from the human who lives there? Right.
right,
And when we saw COVID happening and how everyone was up in arms about all of these different things, that just proved to me government does not watch out for you. You
right,
got to watch out for yourself.
right.
So I had to take all those things into account. And for me, I made the determination that the risk was worth the reward. So I really appreciate you bringing that up because it is a very important first thing to look at for a lot of people.
Yes, and yeah, you just verbalized everything so well, folks. By uncontrollable means he does Leslie's not meaning like uncontrollable as in like a mental breakdown, not like
Right.
that uncontrollable. Uncontrollable as in like the government cannot control your narrative anymore.
Yeah. You're awake.
Yes,
You're
you're
not
awake.
asleep
And
anymore.
and they want you sleep. They want you in the matrix because
Yes.
you are blinded and controlled by that matrix. And so if the government says shift this, you're gonna shift that way.
Hmm.
Shift this way, you're gonna shift that way. It's like a little kind of like a puppet master.
Hmm.
Um, but yes, okay. So your spiritual awakening.
Hmm.
So you went from, as did I, being brought up in religion,
Yep.
not necessarily like relationship with God, but like religion,
Hmm.
the rules and all that stuff, we know. Um, to spiritual awakening as I did as well. What is because you mentioned your spiritual awakening. What
Hmm.
did that look like? What did you learn and how did that come to be?
So, great question. So, yes, I really was a good little Christian soldier.
Mhm.
Like, God, what a judgmental little biatch I had to have been, seriously, looking back at my young self, like, come
Yeah.
on. But when I got herpes, I was suddenly othered from God. I felt very disconnected, and I would go to church for solace because I felt like I could find it occasionally, but
Mhm.
I spent my 20s deeply in, addictions of other sorts, and I would say I was probably verging in my 20s more agnostic. I knew there was a higher
Mhm.
power, didn't really know what I believed.
Right.
So in January of 2019, I had already started to sort of read more about more mystical practices. And I turned and I deemed meditation as a mystical practice because my mom was very much like, we're not doing yoga. That's like against the God, against God. Like, we don't
Mhm.
need to meditate. You can just pray instead. So I thought meditation was a very mystical thing.
Yeah.
So that's including what I was looking into. And also all like the little gateway drugs, quote unquote, of spirituality tarot, crystals, astrology,
Mhm, mhm.
all the fun stuff.
Right.
So in 2019 in January, I had sort of already been becoming curious about all of these different aspects. And
Mhm,
then under the full moon, in Austin, Texas, I remember I was at a comedy show and I knew it was a full moon that night. So I wanted to go out and feel the full moon. I was outside that place, just like feeling this vibration of the moon in my body from like my head all the way down into like my genitals. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is wild. And so all of that year 2019, as I began a meditation practice, as I began to understand what feminine embodiment meant, which very
mm,
much was through dance and which was
yeah,
through more sensual movement,
yeah.
as I started to read about witchcraft, as I started to read about different modalities like crystals and tarot and astrology, and then I
Mm,
found the divine feminine. And she was like, "Here we go, my darling. Let me,"
mm,
she just like held my hand, was like, "Come on."
yeah.
That for me was one, something I first felt averse to because I was like, I'm not going to worship another deity. I don't think that
Mhm,
that's like the thing. But I will say, working with archetypal goddesses, working with goddess deities, so
mhm,
those like Kali, who is a Hindu goddess, goddesses like
mhm,
Hecate, who is from the Greek pantheon,
mhm,
goddesses like Bridget from the Celtic pantheon, which is part of my background,
mhm.
and understanding all the different elements of the divine feminine that manifest through these different female deities to
Yeah.
me was very interesting and very affirming because I
Mhm.
didn't see myself as divine. Like we said, I didn't see myself as part of God. I'm made in God's image, but God is a man. That doesn't track for
That's
me.
right.
How
Uh-huh.
like how
Yeah,
does that make sense?
right,
And
exactly.
so when I started to really
Mhm,
read about the divine feminine, work with these different goddesses, oh, it just started to synthesize in my body and alchemize in my body what the true truth was. Then I read Mary Magdalene Revealed. Have
mm.
you heard about this book by Megan Watterson?
I believe I've heard about it.
Okay.
I know it exists. How about that?
Yep. So she is I'm pretty sure, Harvard trained theologian
Mhm.
who really dug into the Gospel of Mary.
Yes.
And,
The one that was, taken out.
oh, yeah,
Yep,
the one who was taken out, that they found at least 3 copies, all
yep.
missing the exact same portions, but
Mm,
they found the Gospel of Mary long before they found the, Dead Sea Scrolls, but she
yes.
got popular, her gospel became popular after the Dead Sea Scrolls came out, and in the Dead Sea Scrolls, we also see a whole lot of Gnostic Gospels that very much
Yes.
teach what we've been talking about. You are divine within, there is no
Exactly,
sin, there is no
exactly,
hell, hell is a separation from self, which is a separation from
exactly.
God.
Mhm, mhm.
When I read this book, I was like, holy shit, it all makes sense. It all
Yes.
makes sense. And so for me, it was very much diving into goddess religion that began this healing pathway for me to understand who I was from the core and to be able to walk across this world and walk in this world as a divine human and saying,
Mhm,
like, now I do believe in God. I think she has the face of a woman because why else? Why else would she not?
mhm.
Clearly, I don't think that the divine source really has a gender, but until we get some
Right,
equality, we're going to keep saying she's a woman.
right.
So, but I felt that was for me the big awakening. And really, honestly, though, what I had just said about I didn't see myself in this male sky daddy. I
Mhm.
felt
Right.
very much like this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's just
And
patriarchy on a
yeah,
godmother.
yeah, for sure, right?
Yeah.
And yet I just felt so affirmed in all of these other things I was learning about the divine feminine. Now,
Mm,
that was a very key aspect of the spiritual awakening. And all that year in 2019, I heard what I didn't really understand, but now know was my inner voice, my highest self,
mm.
telling me
Yes.
if you really want to understand what it is to be a woman, you've got to quit birth control.
Mm,
You have to get off of hormonal birth control. Now, I am child free by choice. My husband gladly got
mhm,
a vasectomy. And so I came off of the pill in
mhm,
2020. And that very physical body-based experience
mhm.
of having to deal with hormonal imbalances and problems after that just solidified in me how much trauma was locked in my menstrual cycle and in my womb, and how much walking alongside the goddess was helpful in reclaiming the power that was deeply mine always and forever.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a snippet. That's the shortest version.
Listen, I love all of that. I love all of that. I love that. Seriously, I am such a fan. I am such a fan. I have never, felt, even like when I was, and well, I'm gonna when I come on your show, I'll talk more about this. But yeah, like I never felt, even like after I died, went on the other side, learned so many things, and came back.
Mhm.
After my near death experience, I never felt connected to God is a male.
Mhm.
I learned on the other side God is an it,
Mhm.
and it's just like there's no this human binary gender to it.
Right.
It's like divine masculine, divine femininity, and I know on earth we attribute femininity to women, masculinity to men.
Mhm.
um I'm not a fan of patriarchy because it makes it seem like only those who are born male can you know be masculine, when like
Mm.
humans we have both in us.
Mhm.
And it doesn't even make room for intersex people, people that are born both genders or born neither. It didn't even make room for
Right.
that, like forget that. And yeah, so that's lie number one for sure from the Bible, that there's only male, only female. Nope, nope. Your host is intersex, so yeah. So
Yeah.
and but anyways, so but yeah, so I love what you said, like being able to connect with the divine feminine, you know what I mean, and to you know view source as female or
Mhm.
woman, and I'm like, yes, exactly, do that, whatever connects you with source. Like if
Mhm.
that connects you more with source, yes, source is can be that parent and all that stuff. Like, yes, exactly. And I love that. Like, because I was taught so rigidly that God is male. And that blew my mind because I'm just like, that just never sat with me. That just
Mhm.
never, even before my near death experience, that just never sat well with me. And even after my near death experience, the conditioning was so strong that and I on purpose, I think it was strategic that though a lot of things were taken away during my near death experience, you know um this was one of the things that stayed because I had to go
Mhm.
through this journey
Mhm.
of disconnecting the conditioning.
Yeah.
I had to go through that journey, and I see why now. In hindsight, I see why, because that disconnection taught me so much and helped me to receive things so deeply in the way that it was meant to be received for me.
Mhm.
But you would think that, oh, I'm able to see like on the other side, and I'll go more about this on your podcast. Everyone, Leslie has their own podcast, and we'll talk about that at the end, so y'all can go and follow and listen to her podcast. But like, you would think, me being on the other side and realizing and knowing by the Jesus man himself, I didn't get to meet Buddha on the other side, everyone. I would have loved to, but it was strategic that I met Jesus. Why? Because I was taught that he hated me because I was gay. So
Mm.
I needed to get all that hatred out of my heart. So I strategically met the Jesus guy. But the Jesus guy itself told me, notice I said itself, told
Mhm.
me that hell is not real.
Yeah.
And I knew that while I was on the other side. And there's a lot of things that I knew on the other side, but you would think that when I came back to life, that, oh, like I would just live my life and ease, knowing that no, 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 no. A lot of things got taken away, thankfully, but though there are a few things that didn't, because I
Mhm.
had to go through that journey of disconnecting that. And I see why, because the disconnecting from that, it wasn't just about that for me.
Mhm.
The disconnection brought so much lessons and beauty and connections with other people. It brought so much more. And I'm so grateful for that journey. I'm grateful that it wasn't just a part of my plan for it, just the disconnection to be all that there was. Like,
Yeah.
come back to the other side. Oh, hell's not real. No, no, no. The conditioning was so strong in my childhood. I
Yeah.
had to struggle and wrestle with disconnecting from the conditioning. I
Mhm.
had to unlearn in order to learn myself,
Yeah.
to learn who is this powerful divine being that Josias is, which
Mm.
at that time my name was Trenton. I recently
Mhm.
legally changed my name because it fits my healing journey and it's what my name means. That's beautiful.
Mm.
But yeah, Leslie, so I loved everything that you said because I'm just like, yeah, folks, if you connect God as just being source or just Mel, ugh, but sorry, that's just I didn't mean to shrug, folks. I'm working on that. I'm working on that. But connect God with being, mother, and I'm like, yeah, like, duh, you can do that. Don't let society tell you, oh, it has to be this or that way,
Mhm.
or like, no, like this is. Don't let them control you, because like Leslie said, like government, they're not doing certain things because they love you and they want you to prosper. No, they're
Right.
pushing certain things because they're pushing control. That's why when I see all these religious laws, even though there's supposed to be separation between church and state, I was like,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
telling you, that
Mm.
government don't care about no Christianity. They care about control.
Right. Yep.
They care about control. That is what
Mhm.
they want, because at least from what I've read and what I've experienced and what I've seen other people, I don't think I've ever met someone that says that, and I've met a lot of people. I don't think I've ever met someone that says that. I'm not bashing Christianity, I'm just saying this is my observation.
Mhm.
I have never met someone who um, said that Christianity gave them a voice. I've never ever met that. And not, folks, I'm not bashing Christianity. I'm not
Right.
bashing that at all. There's no shame. If that's what works for you, great. I support you. I'm just saying from my observation. And folks, ask yourself, I genuinely want to know, have you met someone that's ever said that Christianity, their faith has given them, or their, excuse me, their religion has given
Mhm.
them, I'm not talking about faith and religion, two different things, but that their religion has given them a voice.
Right.
I mean, if it has, reach out to me on Instagram because I genuinely want to know. Because I used to be an extrovert. I've met plethora of people. I used to be in the church,
Mhm.
met plethora of people. I've I've never, and I'm not exaggerating, folks. I have never ever. It's looking back, I'm just like, I met people where it's like gaslight and silenced, but I don't
Mhm.
remember meeting anyone that give them a voice. And I even tested this. I brought up sexual abuse and how, like, sexual abuse from pastors and how it was handled. And I was like,
Yep.
why why don't we want to talk about this? Why don't? But that's just but anyways, folks, I bring it up, see the reaction. But I don't know. Leslie, have you ever met someone where back in time where you were in the in the church where it
Well,
kind of gave them a voice?
I would wanna ask, is it your authentic voice, or is it a
Right, right.
voice that you think like,
A
oh,
voice
that's
that you're
like
told to have.
yeah, a voice that you're told to have, or is it
Mhm,
you parroting the things that you think you should believe, or do you
mhm,
actually believe it in the body? And one thing that
right.
we talked about earlier that I didn't mention, but I think what's so fascinating, and we kind of just hit it on this, right?
Mhm,
When you look at how the body is treated by the Bible, and
mm,
that the sin is
mhm,
of the flesh is sinful.
mm,
It's just so fascinating because, again, we've talked so much about power over,
mhm,
and power over when it comes to drug laws, power over when it comes to religion, power over when it comes to government, and it's just so interesting because when we don't have the ability to tap into what's true for us in the body, we
mhm.
lose the ability to have our authentic voice
Yes,
and be able to speak it freely and
yes.
understand what it is and what it isn't. And so I think that that's one of the reasons why there are so few people who find truth
Mhm.
their true truth. And
Yeah.
now I'm sure there are people who would completely argue this, right?
Right,
And I
right.
think that we're all on a self-fulfilling prophecy of like confirmation bias around the folks that we are with and we are not with.
Mhm,
But I would think that there are certainly people out there who would say that yes, oh for sure, 100% Josiah, I have found my authentic voice in
mhm,
religion. And maybe one day they'll change their mind and maybe one day they won't.
mhm.
That is their own prerogative. But I think what's
Right.
also really interesting about what you had said is well, it's kind of like an infer you have inferred it.
Mhm.
Do you think one of the reasons why it was hard for you to see a male God and connect with God as father
Mhm.
was because your dad was a preacher? I felt very much like my dad wasn't my dad, he was like the
Right.
church's dad, and so it was like, well, why would I want to have like I didn't feel like I had a deep connection with him because it sometimes felt like he had to abandon his family to go do church business, and when
Right.
his job was God,
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
meant his family was second to job, which was
Mm.
God,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
so that for me was such a weird disconnect. Clearly, I know you've got a lot more tied up with your father's experience,
Mhm.
but like for me, that was hard. And then I think that's why, since I had a very difficult relationship with my mother as well,
Yeah.
when I started to look back at religions pre patriarchy, which for 25 plus thousand years,
Yeah.
our ancestors were worshiping the goddess because that's what made sense to them.
Yeah.
They didn't understand how men were even involved in
Mhm.
birthing children.
Yeah.
So it's like that for me was really an interesting thing to look at to open
Mhm.
my eyes that it's like, oh, this hasn't actually been that long in human history that we've been thinking this way.
Exactly. Yeah.
But what's your take on the father god,
Well,
daddy god, male god?
yes. Two things. This one real thing. Yeah. I learned recently that even in Christianity, like um the goddesses, the feminine aspects were taken out.
Mhm.
It was taken out. But the fact that it wasn't always like that, but it
Mhm.
was taken out and now it's male. Even the name Jesus, that's not his real name.
Right.
But his name went through a couple iterations. His real name is Yeshua, but at one point it was Jesu. But they said
Okay.
that was too feminine. So they
Oh.
added the Jesus. But anyways, but yeah, so that's a fun fact. So but it was I love what you said though. I was just like, yeah, like throughout majority of that history back then, yeah, like anyways, let me not go there. But Leslie said it perfectly. Leslie said it better than I could. So for me, Leslie, um m- my all of my trauma in childhood came from men.
Mhm.
And so I remember even on like even after my near death experience, after having met Jesus, like once I came back in the human body, like yes, I had so much love in me that I've never had before, but there's a part of me I did not like Jesus because
Yeah.
he was male. He showed
Mhm.
up as male. Mind
Mhm.
you, I said showed up as male. Um I did not like him after that because he was male. I'm like, yes, I that hug that he had gave me, I felt so loved and I've never felt that before. But like went back at my human self, I was like, ew, he's male.
Mhm.
Um, gross. I would have rather met Isis or, other like prominent female deities from, Earth's story,
Yeah.
because there's different stories on different planets, whatever. But I know they're very prominent on this planet for our, ascension and collective, all that good stuff. But so what I'm getting to is that so because of that, it was hard for me to, and I just didn't ever like. I remember I didn't even start liking God. Even after I realized that God was source,
Mhm.
I didn't even start liking, and I still to this day like I have like reservations, and though it's gotten so much better, but I've had reservations because I'm just like, men did all this to me,
Mhm.
and I'm just like, but you want me to. I'll just stick to when I was being like very gaslit and stuff like that. I was like, but you want me to pray and say God the Father? I was
Oh,
just
yeah.
like, I don't even know what that is. I don't know what that is. And at this time, I was looking at God as something outside of me, even though I knew God was inside. But remember, I was having to go through that journey
Mhm.
to unlearning that strategically.
Yep.
Um, but it was just like how, so I felt very orphaned I felt
Okay.
very misunderstood. I also started recognizing, I started seeing God as having the same traits as my father or other like toxic masculine men.
Mhm.
Now, mind you, and so I just felt very orphaned and I felt very invalidated that I couldn't even view God as God the Mother because everyone around me was saying God the Father, his love and his this. And I was just like, how come they get to experience that? Like, and
Mm.
then I asked them, I was like, how is your relationship with your father? And they were like, it's great. And I'm like, I'm starting to make some connections here. I was just like, I'm starting to make some connections here. But now I would have preferred, of course, to see God as God the Mother,
Yeah.
because women have always been my safe haven. Like I was always safe, I was always accepted. Now that doesn't mean that like my relationship with my mother was great because once I told my mother about the abuse,
Mm.
her inaction
Ugh.
and her action, it created what's called like a mother betrayal,
Mhm.
and that just destroys a relationship,
Yeah.
and especially when they don't care to get it back to you. So I've always felt orphaned by parents regardless. So any
Yeah.
higher loving figure, it's the only authorities that I actually liked was police. Like that's the only like authorities that I liked. But other than that, like authority, it just was not my cup of
Mhm.
tea,
Mhm.
because I didn't know what a healthy authority looked like,
Right.
because the first healthy authority, I mean, the first authorities that I did get showed me I'm not lovable. So
Mm.
they taught me these horrible things. And so, but women, in society, at school, growing up, just on TV, I always related more, always connected more. And so if that's not the only reason, but that's a huge reason why I'm all for like women's rights. I'm all for like a woman in office, especially when
Mhm.
I learned that throughout majority of history, it was always women always had leadership roles. That's not something new. That just
Right.
we just weren't taught that on purpose.
Mhm.
But I digress. That's a different story. But so my relationships with, saying Heavenly Father, oh my gosh, like still to this day, I hate hearing that because I'm just like, one, it doesn't have to be that. Like
Right.
it can, but it doesn't have to be. And back then, I remember the book God the Father, God the Mother that was taken out of the Bible.
Mm.
During the many councils that were all male folks, they
Mhm.
were all born as a male, many councils that convened over centuries and to discuss, okay, we're going to take this out the book this time, we're going to take this out the Bible, oh, we're going to add this in here. So folks, go look into that. But all male run, let me not start on that. But yeah, so I to this day, like hearing someone say Heavenly Father, I'm not Christian at all, no, at all. But just even hearing that, it makes me shrug because I'm just
Yeah.
like, it just brings me back to a time where I was gaslit but so invalidated, and it's like everyone else got to connect and I felt like I had to force myself to try to connect,
Mhm.
with and be okay with this God the Father and be okay with these lies that were being taught with me. And it's
Mhm.
just kept showing me like, if if this being that's the end all be all, this huge being, it's male, I just think that that was so invalidating to my experiences and invalidating to those who were born intersex or born female.
Mhm.
I felt like that was so invalidating to the divine feminine,
Mhm.
to feminine energies. And I'm just like, in other places and other planets, divine femininity is like,
Yeah.
that's the one. But I'm not saying that's the one, like they accept all, but it's just like I've noticed, at least within this patriarchal society, that it's just another way of um painting masculinity as this top notch way to strive
Yeah.
thing. It's just another way. And so it also keeps people suppressed. It can give people certain control and power over their wives, over
Yeah.
their daughters, over women's bodies just in general. I just think, but yeah, like I just never, I hope that answers your question. I'm trying not to talk so
No,
much.
it did, and it
Yeah.
honestly tracks so hard because I
Yeah.
also get a major ick when I think about,
Yeah.
like, those things too, and I was so averse up until probably last year of, like, even saying that I believe in God, because for
Right.
me, there's such when you say that, "I believe in God," everyone's
Mhm.
like, "Oh, cool, Christian." No, I'm a
Right.
witch. But yeah,
It's just
sure.
like, nope,
First of
it's
all, no, not
different.
that. But yeah, so for me, that's so interesting to like pick apart. Just so I had to know, and I figured you're gonna have some of those thoughts that track for what I thought you were gonna
Yeah.
say. Um, but yeah, I definitely still have very much the same experience. Like I have, it's hard to like be saying you're like I said, that I believe in God and then still have so many issues with the way that God is believed to be. I like to say Christ consciousness, like home me and him are homies. Like I
Exactly.
understand
That's how it
because I understand
is.
what Yeshua and Miriam were doing, right? Like they were trying to blend the divine feminine and the divine healed masculine
Yeah.
together and really usher in to
Yes.
the self alchemy of our ability to like
Exactly.
become our truest self.
Yeah.
Yeah, just when you pick apart, because you were saying they had these councils of people born in male bodies who decided what was okay and what was not. It is still happening. It
Oh
is
my
still
God.
happening. Oh my gosh. So in every translation of the Bible that comes out, and everybody's got a new one. Candace Burr, the chick from Full House, she has a Bible out, and it's like a devotional Bible or whatever. My husband got gifted something. My husband's a Christian. My husband got gifted some Bible version. I wish I had it in here, honestly, but I like piece through it because here's what I always check.
Mhm.
In the story of Adam and Eve, did it say Adam was with her or not?
Mm.
Because he was there.
Mhm.
He was there,
Mhm.
right? But we have pulled that out of
Yeah.
many versions of the Bible. And this Bible that he was given didn't have that in there. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I
Mhm.
knew it." First of all, so the Bible that you may have at your home or the Bible that you grew up with, because I was the King James version, right? And there's many NIVs and all the new guys and whoever is new on the block. Everyone is looking at this differently and taking pieces out based on their own either conscious or subconscious biases. And so when we look back, I just saw somebody talking about this when we look at when homosexuality was added to the Bible, why? 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 It was a mistranslation that even the folks who translated admitted in private letters, oops, we might have gotten this kind of wrong
Yeah.
because it was about slavery. It was
Mhm.
about male masters abusing their slaves.
Children. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
pedestry.
children. Yeah,
Exactly.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Pedophilia too. So it's like
Mhm.
when so yes, here's the thing, back to just like questioning everything that has a power over structure. You are designed to be in connection. Your nervous system is designed to be power with, right? And
Yes.
that's when we truly heal and that's when we truly connect with people. But there are so many systems of oppression and marginalization that are power over structures. And if you can start to question every power over structure, you will completely up like your life will be in upheaval for a little bit. Then hopefully you find your people who are also questioning. But for me, that's been the greatest journey and the one that I think I was put here to do, although I got a little sidetracked for the first 30 something years.
But like, but you know what? I bet you because of that quote unquote sidetracking, I bet someone also experienced the same thing and now they're able to listen to you. Because a lot of times, I know for me at least, um, I've had to see myself in someone in order
Right.
to listen. And
Hmm.
so, I see myself in almost every woman. So, but that's a different story. But there are people that are probably, you know, meant to hear the message. However, they're going to hear it the right amount of depth, because of what you went through.
Hmm.
The depth won't be too little or too much. It would be the right amount for them to receive the way that they're meant to receive in that moment, because of what you went through. So that sidetracking, I completely validate it. And that is a part of like your experience, and because of that, like it's gonna open people. It's really going to open that amount of vulnerability. It's going to open people. And that's what's really, really, really beautiful. I think about like your story. I think your story is such a beautiful experience. I'm not saying every moment felt beautiful. I'm not
Sure.
saying that at all. No. Um, I just, I feel like your presence is so important. I feel like your journey is so important, and there are people that if you didn't go through that, they would not listen
Mm,
to you. And no one to blame them, you know? I mean, you
right.
can't just, so it's hard to just trust people sometimes, you know? Like it's hard to
Mm,
just listen to anything, you know, right, wrong, just different perspective. It can be hard for some people. I know for me, like, because I've been lied to so much
mhm,
growing up. And so, you know, church and religion, all that good stuff. I've just been lied to so much. But, you know, there have been people that they shared something unique in their story. I didn't even have to necessarily to it specifically,
mhm,
but the fact that they shared something that other people would just keep quiet,
mhm.
that made me listen. To me, that's a leader. That's a
Mm,
leader. You know, it's not someone that's on this perfect pedestal. It's someone
mm,
that has been through stuff, has
mhm.
overcame or is overcoming, has been
Yeah.
through progress. And that's who I listen to. That's who I allow in my heart. You know,
Mhm.
that's who I do because so yeah, your story is reaching it's because you're gonna reach the people that it's meant to be reached by Leslie. So I think it's a very beautiful story, and so I validate it all. So
Thank you.
yes. So let's okay folks, this is a longer episode and that's okay. I'm not going to cut this episode up because I feel like listen, I feel like this is one of those episodes where you're going to be like I would be like hooked to it, so I wouldn't turn it off. So yes, folks. But I noticed that a lot of the listeners, Leslie, they listened to the whole episode. It didn't matter. So,
Amazing. Yeah.
so I wanted to give you time to talk about. If do you have to go?
Nope, I'm
Okay.
fully here. Yeah.
So, your mental health journey. You know, depression, anxiety, and
Mhm.
psychedelics. What
Yeah.
did that look like?
Yeah. So the shortest answer is that like I said before, I was anxious from the time I was very little and I couldn't figure out why.
Hmm.
And that anxiety really manifested in, for me, ruminating thoughts, spiraling thoughts, and trying to like numb down the thoughts through alcohol. And as I got into my 30s and had already in my 20s been diagnosed with ADHD, but anxiety and depression, had tried SSRIs, had tried anti anxiety medications like Xanax, oof, and abused them. Let's be very clear, had abused some of those. I entered into my 30s, I moved to a different state, and I realized I don't want to like continue to medicate these symptoms that feel more like band-aids versus getting to the root cause. And so I went to therapy, but again, like I said, I was like a star student in therapy. That didn't mean
Yeah.
that anything was changing. And so when I started to work with psychedelics, the reason why I invited them in is so that I could get over this sexual shame.
Yeah.
I didn't really think they were going to do much for the anxiety because for me, I was kind of managing that already with some meditations and some breath
Mhm.
work. But what was fascinating for me is that psychedelic medicine has given me the ability to, within an anxiety attack, zoom out of my body, see what's happened, notice, all right, this is why you're anxious. This is why you feel like the world's going to end. This is why you feel like the cops are going to come knocking on your door. Cause I had a lot of those fears because I was doing work that was in the gray space of psychedelic work.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, it gave me the ability to pause after that initial anxiety trigger and then reach for all of these things that I started to build within my toolbox to help me manage those anxieties. So for
Mhm.
me, it was like breath work and certain somatic practices like laying with my feet straight up the wall and taking a cold shower
Yeah.
and,
Oh, okay.
doing certain types of breath to like shock the body out of the anxiety spiral
Yes.
and then co-regulation as well. So
Yeah.
with psychedelics, again, it's really about creating new neural pathways.
Yes.
And instead of you living in that state of default mode where anxiety is ruling the show, you're able to connect more with different parts of the brain and new tools to change the way you live moving forward.
Mm,
And it didn't
gotcha.
take long. So, psychedelic microdosing is not something you do forever. I actually have not microdosed in well over a year and a half.
Right, right.
So I spent protocols, is what they're called. So two regimens. The first was about 3 or 4 months long. The second was about 2 months long
Yeah,
of eating this tiny dose multiple times a week and really being intentional about what I was doing when I was working with this medicine.
yeah.
Because I guess the other thing I'll say is so many people out there, and I hate to say it's all men, but it's very bro based.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Very
yeah.
bro based, like Silicon Valley, Joe Rogan, all of those guys have done like
Mhm.
a number on the way psychedelic medicine is looked at. And I think they're very much a capitalistic mindset of like, what can I get from? So
Right.
I try to never say I take the medicine. I
Mhm.
work with the medicine, I ingest the
Mhm.
medicine because I want to be in reciprocity with an ancient healing modality, which I see it as. Also, can we talk about the fact that I think manna in the Bible was mushrooms? But anyway,
Wasn't it? I thought
I
it
think it
was.
was. Yeah, I'm
And the
pretty
burning
sure.
bush was a form of, marijuana.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah,
Cannabis?
yeah, but manna
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
wasn't
Okay.
yeah. Mhm.
Not as radical as I thought that was gonna be. Fabulous. Okay. So, great. So what I'm what I was gonna say is I really think mushrooms, when you track back mushrooms, there's a man whose name is Darren LeBaron. He is I think he's from the UK, but he talks a lot about Africa and like where psychedelics started in Africa and how
Yeah.
obviously Africa is the birthplace of all humanity anyway. He talks about like you can track back spores, mushroom spores came from the stars to this hard rock planet,
Mhm.
broke down the rock into the soil that eventually created the fertile, fecund world that we have today that can support life.
Yeah,
When you think of mushrooms in that way and how connective the mycelium network is that runs beneath the soil to connect us all to everything,
yeah.
it made sense that I could finally start to connect where the anxiety was in the body. Why was the
Mhm.
anxiety poking up? And now, why and how can I move forward in a way that helps to manage the anxiety? So
Yes.
that was really helpful in healing. The depression has been a little bit more difficult to work with
Right.
when it comes to psychedelics. But for me, what I ask medicine to do, what I asked psychedelic medicine to do is to help me see more joy, help me
Mhm.
be open to receiving more pleasure, help me be open to, the greatest possible outcome for the day. And
Yeah.
that has helped me move through some of those depressive episodes as well.
Gotcha, gotcha. I loved what you said. Okay, first of all, Leslie, you verbalized so many things fabulously that I didn't know how to verbalize, but I was thinking. So literally, I learned so much from this conversation. And something that I love that you mentioned was that emphasis on like connection, because honestly, I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, like we're kind of like programmed and it's kind of like this disconnection, like the disconnect from nature, from earth,
Mhm.
disconnect from source, from ourselves, our own
Yep.
power. We're just kind of like this disconnect is thrown at us and taught to us. So I love that you kind of like emphasize, like the reconnection.
Mhm.
Yeah, I reconnection because we were connected. But I love that you had mentioned that. Oh yes, thank you so much. Before we leave, Leslie, I did want you to let people, and I meant to ask at the beginning, I do apologize.
It's
I
okay.
want you to let people know about any work that you have out, because
Mhm.
like folks, any links Leslie sends me will be in the episode description below. So please support. We love to support. Um, you have a podcast, you have
Yeah.
books out. Like what? Let us know a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, since we have touched on psychedelic medicine, I'd love for you to include in the show notes my free microdosing guide. It's
Okay.
going to answer all of the questions. It talks about the science and it answers all the big questions that folks have and are afraid to ask. Okay.
Mm.
And that'll also put you on my email list, which is where we have the most potent conversations. Um, it also links to my shift method, which is an embodiment ritual that takes just 9 minutes. And it's again very good at connecting head to body, helping you get out of the spiraling thoughts. So that's also in that guide. I'm on Instagram at Leslie Draffin. I'm on TikTok at The Womb Mystic. I've got a podcast, The Light Within. And I work primarily in two ways with people. I know, The Light Within. It was perfect.
Such
It
a
was such a good
beautiful
one.
name.
Yeah, it came to me when I was meditating. So,
Love that.
I work with people primarily in two ways. I have a group called the Inner Circle, and
Okay.
that's a group coaching membership. And then I do one on one coaching through my container that's called Unbound. And that's very much based on healing trauma in a sacred way, specifically for women who have experienced sexual trauma, womb trauma, the trauma of being a woman in this world,
Mhm.
which is a traumatizing experience.
Yes.
And so those are also things I can give you some information about.
Okay, fabulous. Yes, please do that. I want to support you. I want everyone to support you. So, folks, go in the episode description below to see all of that information and check out everything that Leslie told us. Um, okay, folks. Well, this has been a fabulous episode. Um, I'm gonna end the episode, Leslie, but stay on just a
Mhm.
couple more seconds.
Sure.
Okay, bye, folks. You are loved. And remember to choose to love yourself today. Even if you don't believe it, even if you don't feel it, choose to love yourself today. All right. It can be in a small self-care. Love is self-love looks broad. So choose to love yourself today. And I know that can be hard. So hey, start somewhere. Choose to love yourself even just once today. Start somewhere. Because you are worthy of it. Alrighty. Love you folks. See y'all next time.